Hi everybody, my name is Anders Frank. I'm sitting in a cool room with Zelda in the background, and I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes to talk about visual attention and getting good at esports. My talk has a key message, and that is that visual attention matters. It can support better game performances as it provides opportunity to see the possibilities of actions in a game environment. And to establish that claim, I would like to introduce a theory from psychology that helps us understand the relationship between gameplay and visual attention. But I also want like to share some kind of a work we're doing in the game League of Legends. Before heading on that topic, I would like to give a little bit background on myself. I've been interested in use cases for quite a long time. It started actually in the 90s when I was given the opportunity to head a virtual reality laboratory. Everybody was, of course, optimistic about technology at that time, and I worked at the VR laboratory for the Swedish military to trying to find use cases and how to use that sort of technology for the Swedish military. Quite interesting head-mounted display, I would say. In the end of the 90s, it was the technology was not, or VR was not that trendy anymore, and it became replaced by games and game technology and so on. So I shifted to look at that one, which was quite nice for me because I love games. So we start using the commercial games engines and also commercial games to adapt them for Swedish military. We try to figure out ways to use that technology for other purposes than just combat and violence. So we did, for instance, a peacekeeping mission trainer called Foreign Ground for the ongoing UN mission in Liberia. I became so interested in the training aspect of it. So you can actually train by games and learn from games. So I shift focus to do that in office training, trying to address that phenomena of wargaming. Now, one had to remember that wargaming has been around in cadet and officer training for centuries. But my sort of interest was not only the good side, but also the bad sides of it, the bad sides, which actually became the thesis, the topic of my thesis, where I start to introduce a concept called gamer mode, which is basically when you play the game and not training for the real stuff. It's just the backside of the gaming because it becomes so powerful that you actually lose the concept why you play the game. So that became the topic of my PhD. But since 2017, I'm at Tobii working on other technology. And in this sense, I'm working on eye tracking. I work as a position as a game experience researcher. And once again, I'm trying to identify the user values, but now with eye tracking. And I've been working with many well-known games to influence the games with eye tracking. For instance, Shadow of the Tomb Raider or The Division, where we really trying to define aspects of the game and influence the game with eye tracking, to move the camera, to aim with your eyes, and also to create immersion effects and lighting and so on. But since a while back, we are more focused on esports, which is kind of another aspect of eye tracking because it's analytical use, to use the eye tracking technology to become better. And a couple of years ago, we did a study among professional Dota 2 players. And we interviewed them to try to figure out what kind of skills are needed to be good at the game Dota 2. And the arguments and the logic behind that was if we're going to introduce eye tracking to support that skill level, we need to, first of all, we need to understand what kind of skills are needed to play the game, to play the game good. So this is all these answers interviews was then analyzed and categorized into different groups of skill levels, and we can see in this graph how the different categories are changing over as you move from novices to expert. And the first category is mechanical skills, which is basically learning how to play the game, the moving, the camera control, and the hitting and the creep control, harass stuff, and your body abilities, and very mechanical skills, which is a skill level that's quite easily been learned in the beginning, but it's never ever learned finally learned to the extent that you don't learn anymore. So the graph of that one, moving from novice to expert, is actually goes from have a steep learning curve and then plateaus, but it doesn't. It still increases. The second category of skills is what we can call awareness skills. And awareness skills is when actually you would like to read the game. If you survive and not being killed constantly, are you looking at the team positioning yourself and also the opponents and the incoming threat? You're being aware of what time it is, the time awareness and cooldown of your abilities, but also what kind of level the opponents are. And that is a skill that's quite not really introduced and learned when you're a novice. It becomes aware of it, but it is being more associated to intermediate and expert players. And the last category is what we can call higher cognitive skills. For instance, be able to really understand the game in depth, to predict what's happening, what are the enemy intentions, what are our current tactics, what to do, but also on the meta level, what items and abilities or heroes should I choose given the current situation. And that skill is mostly associated to those players who are really good at the game. So having this graph in the end gave us a rough estimate that having the eyes on the game really changes depending on what kind of skills level you're trying to sort of enhance. So the question is then, how do players extract meaningful information from the game? Because it is different meaningful information of tactics that is for actually creep control and the clock and so on. So how does actual visual attention and gaming relate? How can the player extract meaningful information? And one aspect of that one is to introduce the theory of ecological psychology. One of the proponents of those is psychologist James J. Gibson. He spent his life interested in visual perception, and in his work he coined the term affordances, which I would spend some time to talk about. Affordances is the mutual relation between the organism, that is, of course, humans, and the environment. And one needs to keep in mind that the environment contains everything. It is the background, it's the city, it's the forest, it's the objects in the city, it is the humans and the animals, so it's everything. And all those things exist in relation to each other in a layer structure, which constantly changes as events occur. Humans and organisms are actively changing the environment, interacting with it. And the affordances is actually when the environment, how that offers to humans. It is the relationship between an agent and the environment. And I will give you a couple of examples here to really simplify what I mean. If we take an object, as we usually call a chair, it offers most humans a place to sit on. But it doesn't offer that to a very small human, for instance, an infant who's not able to do that. Or animals, for that said, take, for instance, an extreme value as a fish. Fish cannot sit on this one. So we cannot say that this sort of object is something you sit on. It applies to a certain kind of organism or humans. And even if we design and create objects to offer actions to most humans, one must remember there's always relative to an agent. So this scene of the cockpit, as I am, and I'm 2 meters and 4 centimeters, offers something else than a place to sit and rest on, and move around. For me, it's more like offers torture. I cannot stand sitting in an airplane. Uh, that's for sure. Another example is that we have an object we can call a hammer, which has some kind of a qualities to it. It offers something to grasp. It offers you can hit with it, and you can also throw it. But that's only relevant for those individuals who can grasp the hammer. And for instance, humans without arms that's not an object that offers that same qualities properties as for other humans. And what about learning then? Well, part of it is that it is constrained by the physical properties of the agents of ourselves as interacting with the environment. But many of the things can actually be learned. There's abilities that can be developed. And one we need to keep in mind that the perceiving of affordances or the possibilities of actions are essential for survival. It is what our perception systems have evolved to do. So learning is about differentiating and making finer distinctions about the world to discover new affordances that was previously invisible by experience, training, time, and explorations. And it usually comes to that extreme when an organism is totally compatible to an environment. We can call it attuned to the environment. And then in that sense, the experts become a sea of affordances that's more or less invisible for novices. For instance, if we take this beautiful part of the forest, for me, it's a place that offers walking about, in taking a rest, enjoying the smell and sound of it, perhaps. My stepmother, looking at the same situation or same image, will see other affordances. You will perceive other affordances than I am. She will immediately respond to say that, this is something where I can pick mushrooms. And she has done that, of course, to make final decisions, and of course, and have experienced similar situations and cultivated her perception to see those affordances. And same goes for new sports situations where a good soccer player can see the opportunities, when to pass, when to shoot. She or he are able to read the game. And interesting for us as spectators of the sport is that it's enjoyable to see those really good soccer players in actions. If we can see those acting upon their affordances, which is kind of interesting because it doesn't only apply to perceiving the what to do, it's also performing what to do, which take us to the difference between perceiving and acting on our affordances. And according to the theory, there is actually no difference. Seeing and acting on affordances is deeply intertwined. We act to perceive and we perceive to act. We move our heads to see better what's going on, and we shuffle off objects to perceive new affordances. We move a wall to be able to see behind it. We construct roads and level out the environment. We do constant changes to the environment to perceive new affordances to make a roadway drivable and so on. And the theory also describes two different kind of actions to that one. And the first action aspect is exploratory. And that is the part when you explore perceive the possibilities, gather all the information, what kind of affordances are in their surroundings. And the other one is actually performing it. As I said in the earlier example of the performatory soccer player, he or she is able to see the opportunity but also act on it. And to give another example for this one, in the human activity of playfulness and game world, we have a game of chess. Game of chess is a game that's more or less designed around the exploratory function. Performing the moves, that is changing the chess pieces, change the position of the chess pieces, is more or less trivial. But what to change is on seed opportunities is the hard stuff. In the other end of the spectrum, we have track and field, for instance, 100-meter dash relay, which is kind of a trivial way to understand what to do. You just run in a straight line for 100 meters, but it's super hard to actually perform that in a good way. And if we go through the video games, for instance, Counter-Strike, that's something that's always usually falls in between. You not only need to move around to see the opportunities of what to do and so on, you also need to perform quite well. So when you get an opportunity for a shot, you need to really be fast enough and do it really, really quickly. So most games have those kind of two aspects of actions already designed in them to play the game. So now I'm going to show you a video from influencer called Backy Jackie. So when he explains how to play PUBG, and we will see he's using eye tracking in this video, so we can see the bubble moving around where he's looking at, and he will show us how a technique to spot the enemy. And as you will see in the video, he will constantly move to be able to perceive the opponents. But we also will see that he's quite effective to performing and realizing the affordances when he gets the kills, opportunity for kills, I would say. Let's see, I can get it off here.
Welcome guys! I've said it before, being good at spotting enemies is the single most important skill to have in PUBG. The reasons are obvious. Spotting your enemies before they spot you allow you to move in open areas with low risk, allow you to take the first shot in a gunfight, or let you decide if it's better to avoid confrontation when executing stealth tactics. The art of spotting enemies lies mainly in the way you use your eyes, where you focus and how you scan your surroundings. I illustrated this manually in my old spotting video, but now thanks to my sponsor Tobii Gaming, I am able to show you this using Tobii eye tracking technology. What you will see here is as real as it gets, as I have been able to record exactly where I look during gameplay. The content of this video is scan types, focus resource management, and detecting movement. The first scan type is the horizontal scan. The horizontal scan is by far the most important way to spot enemies when running in the open. My most frequently used strategy is to stay completely away from vehicles and instead simply move out directly in the open. The reason I feel comfortable doing this is because of the effectiveness of horizontal scanning. Horizontal scanning is a method you want to use when you want to be able to consume as much visual information at the fastest possible rate, which is also super useful when holding a position or trying to identify the location of an enemy while looking in the direction you just heard him fire a shot in. Horizontal scanning should be used when an enemy would naturally stand out in relation to his surroundings by contrast alone. Using the Tobii Eye Tracker 4C, I was able to record this heat map of my focus, which is really cool because you can clearly see in which areas of the screen I look the most. Take a moment to study this recording.
And as I said earlier, the horizontal scan that Wacky Jackie goes through, and a more example in the video, I don't have time to show it, is a technique to really see the affordances. Horizontal scan is not the affordance itself, it's actually it's a technique to discover the affordances. And since Battle Royale is more or less a game that if you see an enemy, if you see a moving avatar, it's the enemy. Could be the team, of course, but it's mostly the case. It's a survivor game, so it's mostly enemy. So there are certain techniques to really discover those affordances when it comes in sight, hit the enemy. So horizontal scan is a technique to discover the affordances. which comes up to the summing up to the ecological psychology and gaming. And I borrowed this quote from Jonas Linderoth, who wrote in his paper that gameplay is to perceive and act on and transform the affordances that are related to a game system or other players in the game. And in this sense, it's interesting because it's a definition of gameplay and gaming with this theory in mind that doesn't actually care of what form it is being played in. It could be board games, it could be video games, and it can even include sports, which is funny because there's given the current debate about whether esports is a real sport or not. So what about then visual attention and how to improve that skills? Can we support the visual attention, the ability to attend to your visual perception? Yes, we can, and we just started this journey. We can provide metrics. We can track the visual attention in some aspect. And by having metrics, we can explain to players how the strengths and weaknesses of their ability to take advantage of the information richness of the game environment. And Tobii has, together with Mobalytics, created visual attention metrics in the sort of companion apps that's being developed by Mobalytics. And that companion app, Game Performance Index, contains many aspects of playing League of Legends. Now we are precisely right now we are introducing visual attention to an eye tracking to that sort of metric, existing metrics. But the key challenge is to transform eye tracking data into meaningful and game-specific metrics. And last year, we spent some serious time to create kind of understanding of that field. So we collect gaze data from a vast amount of different players from different ranks and analyze that together with to get some kind of a contextualizations of what's going on. So it became meaningful. And from that, we obtained 5 metrics. And those 5 metrics are, first of all, the minimap awareness. That's the frequency you look at the minimap and how much time you spend on that minimap. The second one is tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is a bad aspect of it because you're focused on a specific region and you're sort of zoning out on something. You're neglecting other parts of the game. So it's a metric that tells you how often you do that. Information processing indicates how much rapidly you can process information. Which is kind of the average fixations is calculated because it is really associated to professional performance if you are processing information quite rapidly. And to those who is really aware about the theory, he will say that, wait a minute, information processing is not compatible to the theory of ecological psychology. Well, I can counter that. I know. The fourth aspect concerns fight preparation. It is a measurement how aware you are with the surroundings before you enter a fight. Look at the minimap, look at the surroundings, your abilities, and so on before entering a fight. And peak awareness is that you are when you're getting picked off, it's usually because of you don't pay attention to the surroundings. So we can measure how if that happens and if you are paying attention to the game. I would like to show you an example from video. I'm gonna hide my screen over here, and this is an image of video. A player who played Twisted Fate, and he plays mid lane, and he's about to get his ultimate. And before he gets an ultimate, he scans and see that the opportunity in the bot lane. And we will see in the video how often he checks the bot lane, what's going on, and so on. And immediately he's got the ability for the ultimate, he will go there. So he's and also looking at if they're in the right moment. So let's see the video. It's without sound though. And the red rectangle over there is actually the measurement of the fixations of the eye. So it's actually where we can quite easily see when eyes are on the minimap. And we should perhaps take that again, because now it's over, more or less. So what's happening in the beginning here is that he or she actually, is playing the game and is constantly looking at the bot lane over there, makes a fixation, and soon he will get his ultimate. Bam, bam, check it out. There he goes, and decides where to go. Bam. So he constantly checks if it's the right and preparedness to do that before he actually enters the fight. What are the benefits for this kind of system? Well, first of all, we have the ability to track how players gather information, seek affordances, with the eye tracker and the storing of the gaze data. And by that, we can analyze that and provide feedback to the players and tell how to improve their information gathering skills through the metrics. And then we lay the foundation for players to make use of what they see to improve their decision making. If James Gibson would be around, he would say that, well, you know what? Players are supporting the quest to discover affordances. He wouldn't use that kind of a thing of decision making. He would say that players are supported in the quest to discover affordances, which is kind of neat. However, the metrics support discovery of the affordances. The metrics is not the affordances by themselves. At the same time as the horizontal scan is not affordance by itself. It's a technique to discover the affordances. So the metrics tell us what part of the screens you're looking at, not on what items specifically. And to really understand what you're looking at, you need to understand, you need to experience and training to, as I said earlier on. For instance, if you have a situation on a minimap, is that a threat or is that an opportunity? That depends. Depends on the skill level. It can also depends what was happening, of course. To really unlock the potential for this one, I encourage people to take on the journey to develop future companion app that will assist in perceiving and acting on more affordances, which is tailored on player skill level. For instance, scanning. We can, if we have an affordances system live in the game app, we can measure how often you were killed by an opponent that you didn't spot before. And that is, if that's live and that can be measured, we can introduce ideas that you really need to change the ways you scan your horizon, actually scan the game. Or we can make predictions for this encouragement. For instance, if things are building up to become a threat, and to be able to detect if the players actually see those things and or highlight that something's going on and so on, to really nurture and train the players to perceive those kind of affordances when the situation build up. And the same goes for planning, to avoid taking risky actions, for instance, roaming around in League of Legends when you are quite uncertain or unaware. If that could be measured live, that could actually encourage you to change your behavior. As having this instructor behind them and saying that, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? But to realize that, of course, we need some kind of advanced systems. We need machine learning and computer vision, or preferably we can integrate this kind of a training metrics or analytical metrics in the game itself. So to integrate that, because then we can make use of the full API to really make sense of what's going on in the contextual situation of the game. To sum this presentation up a little bit, I have first introduced the Gibson ideas on affordances, which provides quite valuable insights how visual attention relates to successful game performances. The theory itself combines the exploration phase, the ability to see what opportunities are before us in the environment, and acting on it, the performatory aspect of it in an interesting way. And player discovery and acting upon those affordances are essential to improve in the game performances. Not only seeing what to do, but also doing it. And by tracking visual attention, we can support this discovery, for instance, with eye tracking. And the journey has just begun. I encourage all of you to pick a game and let's get started because there's so much work to do. And by that, I would like to say thanks for listening to this presentation. Hope you learned something about that. And au revoir, hej då och hoppas vi syns nästa GDC. Bye.